Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian at National Guard headquarters in Northern Virginia, where we've got the honor of talking to Brigadier General Glenn Hagler, who is the Vice Director for Domestic Operations here at the Guard. Sir, you guys are very engaged in Irma, prepping for Irma, Jose, other storms, wildfires. So thanks so much for taking some time out of your schedule to talk to us.
Well, thank you. And as we get started, just want to let everybody know that we empathize with everyone that's caught up in Irma and everybody that has been affected by Harvey and the wildfires out west and whatnot. We're proud to serve the needs of those folks and to help them out.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, the National Guard is really the pointy end of the spear on a state level across the country. Texas Guard was fully mobilized for Harvey. Florida Guard has been totally mobilized for Irma's impact. We're also waiting to see what happens with Jose, following up close after that. Give us a survey of what Guardsmen are doing around the country, both to support Irma, both to get ready for those two key storms, but then elsewhere in the country, the key role you guys are playing in disaster preparedness, but also disaster recovery.
All right. Well, today we count 46,000 National Guardsmen on duty worldwide in Afghanistan, here in America, and other places as they're needed. We're designed to support the federal reserve mission of the Army and the Air Force, and we are under the command and control of the governors for domestic type operations as they're occurring today. So in Texas, there's about 16,000 still on duty there, and we expect them to hold at that level for a few more days, and then they'll reduce in force based upon civil authorities' capacity to address that issue as effectively as they desire. In Florida, we're already reaching above 3,000, on our way to 7,000. We'll probably touch 8,000 here very soon, and we have other forces that are arrayed throughout the rest of the states that are preparing for movement into Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina as needed. And then we've got about 1,300 working just forest fires in the western states today as well. So there's quite a bit of application of National Guard forces expanding civil authority and their ability to deal with all different manners of hazards throughout the country today.
Talk to us about what specifically Guardsmen are doing to prep for Irma and Jose. That's going to be a 1-2 punch. Looks like it's going to be hitting directly Miami, one of America's largest cities. Talk to us about some of the breadth of missions you guys are performing on the ground.
Okay, so we are indeed already responding in the Virgin Islands with a very strong active component force lay down. The Navy is very much involved in assisting those residents of St. Thomas in particular, and also Puerto Rico. So that response is underway as we go. With regard to Irma, we are preparing for shelter type support operations because, as you know, there's a large evacuation going on in Florida. Not everybody will make it out, either by design because there's critical skills that are required in Florida, or residents are unable to move as they would like to. But then we're prepared to immediately follow in at the governor's direction to support civil authorities as they address the damage that is expected. Everything from clearing routes of debris so that we can get first responders in to address the issues, again to support the general population with regard to shelter operations, movement of commodities, that are essential, food, water, fuel, et cetera, as needed, and then to obviously participate first and foremost in any life-saving activities that are required, search and rescue, et cetera.
And that's where both on land side, but aviation component comes in critically.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so there's we're posturing aviation assets, particularly Army National Guard helicopters and Air National Guard rotary wing. They do have quite a good search and rescue force in the Air National Guard, so we're posturing those kinds of capabilities to put them at the disposal of the governor in Florida.
Talk to us a little bit about what your role here is at National Guard headquarters, because the states are the ones who are really doing this, but what's the key role you guys play in the whole Guard ecosystem response infrastructure?
So we are responsible for working with our partners in the states to plan and prepare for these kinds of events. We have learned quite a few lessons over the last several years, and we've acted upon those lessons. We frequently prepare for the worst case scenarios that each of the states face, Each of those states are, particularly the National Guard, is involved with their state emergency managers. They understand their state's civil capacity to respond to scenarios, and then they apply National Guard capability to expand the capacity of those civil agencies. And so we identify those things that a state National Guard may not have in its inventory to support those civil authorities, and then we perform an analysis on that and make sure that we can cover it with other National Guard forces or active duty forces as may be needed, based upon the capability that's identified in those gaps. So we do that planning, we do that preparation. We also exercise those plans, and we stress those plans to failure. We identify where the gap was not met, and then we take that lesson learned and replan. Or, in the case that we're going through right now, we act and execute those plans, and we identify the stresses there, and we learn from those lessons and then put that back in the planning cycle.
I was going to put a lessons learned question to you, but let me ask you, with a storm that's as massive as Irma is, which is record-setting in many ways in terms of its sheer power, does that change the approach you have when something is so extraordinary, so large? You could also argue Harvey was very bizarre in its own way, because not only did it make landfall, but it just sort of stayed and dumped 33 trillion gallons of water on Texas and Louisiana.
So to get to the second part of what we do here, during an actual event, we are meeting the needs of the state authorities, in that case Texas, or in this case Florida, and other Gulf Coast states or Eastern Coast states. We posture forces so that they are ready to go. We identify those forces based upon the previous planning that had occurred, and also direct requests from the states. They know something now that they didn't know because of something that changed between the time that we prepared this set in May to now. We posture those forces in supporting states, and we put some of those folks on duty so that they can be ready to move whenever the entire force is called upon. And then we also help those states that are asking in Florida and Texas. We help meter the flow. You can't get everything exactly at the same time, because that's as problematic as not getting what you need. So we take the effort to array forces and then to push them in the timeline that the supporting state requires it.
And are you pulling from other states also, or are they just a regional response? I mean, are you going, for example, up north, whether to Virginia or New York or other states, to get their assets involved and engaged as well?
So yes, we are. So we're reaching out into the Midwest because we're assuming that the Gulf Coast states and the East Coast states are going to require their forces. So we do that well in advance. We've already identified back in the May timeframe what we believe we would need and where we would need that from. And we balance that against the federal mission as well. So we know if there's a deploying unit, then we're not going to put that on the list. But we have enough capability in most cases that we can get it from another state. And if we can't, we have the ability to reach out to our partners on the active component side to fill in that gap as well.
And you mentioned May. Talk to us about what kind of planning goes into this, because this is not immediate. You've got books of different sorts of sets of plans. Talk to us about the planning cycle as you prepare for each hurricane season. What are the scientific inputs you guys are using? You guys have your own, some of the best meteorologists in the world are wearing uniforms. Talk to us a little bit about how you do this.
Okay, so every plan begins with a scenario, and those scenarios are driven at the local and state level. So states know what hazards they're going to face more than others. And so they begin that planning at their level. When we get to the May timeframe, the State National Guard has worked very closely with the State Emergency Management Agency. They have pulled together all of the, in that scenario, all of the different kinds of data that they need. And when we do consult with universities, we do consult with our own experts, and of course our own history. And we bring that together, and we begin that gap analysis process. And it's a very somewhat tedious process, but it's necessary to protect the American people. So we have professional, serious people walk through those plans and identify those gaps and make sure that that we have what we need from a military perspective to support those civil authorities.